SpaceX is preparing to go public, and this could be one of the biggest IPOs in history. According to the latest reports, SpaceX is targeting an IPO price of around $135 per share. The company plans to sell roughly 500 million shares, which means it could raise about $75 billion. To understand how massive that is, Saudi Aramco's IPO in 2019 raised around $26 billion. So, SpaceX could raise almost 3 times more than the previous record. And the valuation? Around 1.75 trillion. That would instantly put SpaceX amongst the most valuable companies in the world, next to names such as Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon and Google. But here is the important part. When investors buy into this IPO, they are not just buying today's SpaceX. They are buying the story of reusable rockets. They are buying Starlink, the satellite internet business. They are also buying NASA contracts, defense contracts, commercial launches, and the dream of Starship. And maybe most importantly, they are buying the possibility that SpaceX becomes much more than a rocket company. It could become a space infrastructure company. Launches, satellites, internet, communication, defense, AI, infrastructure, maybe one day even space-based data centers. This is why the market is so excited. But excitement and good investment is not always the same thing. At a valuation of almost 2 trillion, SpaceX has to execute more than perfectly. Starlink has to keep growing, Starship has to become commercially successful. We should all be going to Mars, frankly. Launch demand has to remain strong, and the company has to prove that this valuation is not just based on Elon Musk's vision, but on real future profits. There is also another important detail. Even after the IPO, Elon Musk is expected to keep very strong voting control over the company. So, public investors may be able to buy the stock, but they will not really control the company. So, the real question is not simply, is SpaceX an amazing company? I think we can agree that it is. The real question is, at what price does even an amazing company become too expensive? And that is what investors really need to think about. For me, the SpaceX IPO will be one of the biggest market events of the year. But I would not treat it emotionally in any way. I would watch the valuation, the first trading days, the financials, and whether the market gives investors a better entry point after the initial hype. Because SpaceX may become one of the greatest companies in history, but even great companies can be bad investments, depending on when you buy them. And that is the lesson from this IPO. But here is the interesting part. We look at revenue, and the picture becomes very different. SpaceX generated around $18.7 billion in revenue in 2025. Now, that is an impressive amount for a private space company, sure. But let's compare that to the giants that are already worth trillions. Nvidia generated more than 200 billion in the latest fiscal year. Microsoft generated around 300. Apple generated around 400. Alphabet generated around 400 as well. And Amazon, well, they're pushing it to almost a trillion. So SpaceX is being valued like a mega-cap company, but it does not yet have mega-cap revenue. And that is the most important lesson for investors. A great company and the stock is not always the same thing, and SpaceX surely might become one of the most important companies in the world. At almost 2 trillion valuation, investors are not paying for what SpaceX is today. They are paying for what SpaceX might become 10 or even 20 years from now. And a good comparison is a boring company such as Spotify. Spotify make roughly the same revenue as SpaceX, around the high teens in billions. But Spotify's market value is not even $100 billion. And SpaceX, meanwhile, is valued at almost 2 trillion. That does not automatically mean SpaceX is overvalued, though I do believe it is. It means that the market is placing huge premium on SpaceX's future. The market is saying this is not just a rocket company. This could become a global internet company, defense. It could launch a monopoly, satellite infrastructures, all sorts.